right, let's see here. Silhouette. There we go. Gong. Okay. Coyote. I think that was it. Piggy. Yeah. A little gong. What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the Athlon Helos BTR Gen 2 and specifically the 2 to 12 by 42 first focal plane scope. And you know what? I'm going to go over everything you need to know about this scope, what comes in the box, features, specs, how it did on the range, and I'll give you my overall opinion about the scope and maybe even some potential alternatives if this is not what you're looking for. So if you're looking for specific information and don't want to watch the whole video, check out the description. Just do me a favor and hit the like button before you go. And you know what? If you like this kind of content, I do scope reviews and rifle build parts and accessories, reloading, and just general gun content. So you should subscribe because you know what? You're an awesome patriot and you want to support gun channels on YouTube, at least while we still have them. So appreciate it. Let's get into the video. All right, so I've got this SPR build project that I did, and this thing is actually a rebuild. Originally, it had an 18-inch ballistic advantage barrel. We had an A2 stock, and the entire thing was actually rattle canned about 18 different times, and I just want to do a refresh on it. So replaced the barrel. We got a 16-inch stainless DS Arms barrel that I actually had Cerakoted in midnight bronze, and then had the receiver and handguard done in OD green, along with the OD green furniture. And this thing just looks fan-freaking-tastic. Love it. Love the OD green, and that midnight bronze barrel with the OD green just looks really, really good. But anyway, new Athlon was coming out with the Gen 2, so I couldn't wait to get my hands on one. Of course, I did finally get a hold of one. I've actually had this for about 2 or 3 months ago, and this thing is fantastic. It's beautiful. Looks really, really good on this rifle, and just love it. I've had it out to the range a couple times already, which we'll talk about here a little bit. These new generation Helos scopes are fantastic. Redesigned from the ground up. There's nothing wrong with the original Gen 1s, but I really felt like they were kind of I don't know, they were just kind of the Argos 2.0. Like I said, these are a complete redesign, and they're just beautiful. We've got several different ones within the line, and this one is the 2 to 12, as I mentioned. There is a 1 to 10 low power variable that you can get if you're interested in that. Of course, you don't get target knobs. It is second focal plane and no side parallax or anything like that, so you're just going to have the BDC reticle. But it is a 1 to 10. This is get into the 2 to 12. Of course, you're going to get into that first focal plane. And the 2 to 12 is the only one that gets you an actual BDC reticle, which we'll talk about. You get the exposed target turrets. There is a 4 to 20, and it's very similar to this one. You're going to get a different reticle, but functionality is going to be the same. And then, of course, they have a 6 to 24 by 56, I think. That's the big Haas, and that one's actually a 34 millimeter tube. So depending on what your application is, you've got a couple of options. And what I really, really like about the design is they've really kind of targeted the DMR kind of market. And so, for example, SPR builds, SPR projects, DMR projects, semi-automatic precision rifle stuff, rifle that you want to take out to the field. And they did this at an unbelievable price point. These things are coming in under $500, particularly with the 2 to 12. And the 2 to 12 range is really good for your AR platform. So yeah, just could not wait to get my hands on this. And I got to tell you guys, I really, really like this scope. There's tremendous amount of upside. And who doesn't like a good value? Athlon makes great products. Typically, if you're not familiar with them, you're typically going to get some of the best glass for the money. So anyway, let's take a look at what we got in the box. All right, so Athlon always does a really good job with their packaging. Of course, don't want to spend too much time on what's in the box, but you do get a nice packaged setup here, and got the little magnetic flip tab. So if you're going to resell the scope, or you want to put it away or something like that. Got a nice little container to do that. And then it comes well packaged, of course, with foam and all that stuff. You don't get a lot of accessories. You get, of course, a wrench with some additional set screws. We've got a user manual here, and I think a battery. I think it came with the battery. I've got actually a couple of these. I have the 4 to 20, and I think one of them didn't come with the battery for whatever reason. But yeah, that's it. So no 3-inch sunshade, no bikini covers, no flip caps. I'm pretty sure that the Athlon Argos, at least the Gen 1, came with some flip tabs or flip caps. That's pretty common, maybe from the Helos line on up. I know I've got a couple of Aries and they did not come with anything like that. Not a big deal, just letting you know. Moving on to the scope. Look at this guy. Really, really good looking optic, I think. Very well designed, good aggressive look here. Got a nice weight to it, and I'll put all the specifics to the specs down in the description, but I just want to give you at least a look at it, okay? And they put a lot of modern design cues in this scope that you should expect for a precision rifle nowadays, and to get all these for the money, you're going to be really, really hard pressed finding a better value, in my opinion. A couple of things to note is we have large exposed target turrets. They are locking. Yep, they are locking. Both windage and elevation have locking turrets on them. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that okay, and you can hear it nice and audible. And we've got nice tactile clicks. Total elevation in this is like 100 minutes. I think this one might actually be 120. I'll pop up some information on that specifically because I can't remember off the top of my head. Total revolution is 25 minutes per revolution. The milled version would be 10 mils. That's really nice on the field, especially on an application like this where you don't want to spend a lot of time having to remember how many revolutions that you were on. And really, I only take this rifle out to about 600 yards. So I'm not even going a full revolution. I won't go past 25. I think it's like 17, 18 minutes maybe off the top of my head to get out to 600 yards. But really, really nice. Nice feel to the turret. You can hear individual clicks. All right, everything is nicely graduated here. We've got indicator for our elevation. Even our windage is properly marked. So if we're moving the bullet impact right, we've got R for right. If we're moving our bullet impact left, we've got L for left. And of course, we can lock that down. Okay. We also have a fast focus eye ring here. Power adjustment is stiff, but it's really easy to move. No issues there. Of course, you can get a throw lever if that's what you want. And then also we've got side parallax, so that's going to help us dial in those shots at distance here. And then we have an illumination knob as well. This is a BDC reticle and it is illuminated. And check it out, we've got offsettings between each power setting there for the illumination. So really nice setup, and that's right where God intended it to be, on the parallax knob. I know people get hung up on the Argos. You know, it's got that that dude hanging out there on the, or your power jet, or your illumination knob over here on your objective bell. People don't like that. And as I mentioned, this is first focal plane, etched glass BDC, multi-coated, which is typical for the industry, but you're going to get an upgraded glass over, say, an Argos or a Talos. Of course, with this one being the 2 to 12, a great power range for ARs, 5.56, 223, that kind of stuff. You get the bigger objective over the 1 to 10, and that's going to give you a little bit brighter image, by the way, so you just get a little bit better image quality because you can collect a little bit more light. And nice matte finish, 30 millimeter tube, and just an overall good looking rifle scope. And before I forget, guess what? It does have 0 stops. So let's take a quick look at that. Pop that off, and they call it their precision 0 stop. And all you do is you remove the cap. Okay, and when you get to the range, you're going to see this nice brass erector assembly here. And what you'll do is you got 3 set screws around this outer ring down here. You've got a little screw here. You don't want to mess with that one, but you'll simply just unseat those set screws, remove the ring, put your cap back on, cinch it down, go ahead and get your zero done. And then once you're ready to slip your scales, of course, you'll take this back off. You'll put your ring on. You want to make sure that this stop is going clockwise, not counterclockwise, or just bind up on you. Once you get it set, go ahead and cinch down your set screws and slip your scales back to zero, which I'll do real quick. So if we go ahead and we listen to that, look at that, listen to that. Hear that? Nice little stop there. Of course, when you hear it, you go ahead and lock it down. You're in business. And I actually have this mounted. It's called I'm going to attempt to say this, a jdamaleywo. It's on Amazon. I will spell it out in the description. Just Google it. I can't put a link. I apologize. YouTube will melt on fire, and the world will just end if I put any links to firearm accessories. So you're just going to have to find it. But really good mount. I just call it the JDAM mount because it sounds cooler and it's easier to say. But yeah, this is a really solid mount, really well made. It's a 20 MOA mount. You don't necessarily need a 20 MOA with as much travel as you have with this, but canting that scope down a little bit will just help center the scope at distance. So it'll be somewhere in the middle of the turret assembly, and we'll get a little bit better glass quality at distance where it counts. So yeah, so there you go, pretty cool. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, we can talk about how this thing actually did on the range. So as I mentioned before, I've had this for probably 2-3 months now, and I've had a couple range sessions with it. The first time I went out, I just kind of took it out, got familiar with it. I didn't bring any camera equipment, I apologize. Took it out to 600 and had a good time with it. Went back out to the range the second time. This time I brought some camera equipment, and I did actually go out to 400 yards the second time. Had a lot of fun on the range with the scope. This thing is fantastic to shoot. Was able to get ensure that it stayed at zero, and I also picked up a little Holson 507 and set that up with an offset sight with this 2 to 12 kind of concept. You know, it's nice having that little offset sight as a transitional optic. Probably really not that I don't really need that, to be honest with you, but I like to have it. I was actually able to zero the red dot, just slaving it right to the optic. Took about 15 minutes to do, and was hitting steel at 100 yards with the little offset sight. So that was pretty cool. And sometimes with budget optics, you can have some glass issues. Athlon does a really good job about delivering a great quality glass to us, the consumers, for not a lot of money. This was no exception. Got it out to the range, and I was able to pick up really fine details. Particularly, I shoot a lot of steel, and the steel targets that I shoot are fixed. And when you're shooting those targets at 300, 400, 500, 600 yards, you know, you don't get a lot of audible sometimes at those distances, and you need to really have that visual confirmation that you hit the target just by the pattern that the round will make when it makes an impact versus a miss and it's a splash. Looking at colorations, changes in the dirt and stuff like that. I could actually see all that and felt really comfortable. And I felt that the glass really kind of outperformed my expectations, to be honest. So super excited with the performance. Getting into the turrets, obviously if you're going to have a precision rifle scope, it needs to track. I've had a lot of success even with the sub $300 optics from Athlon about actually having really good tracking. And I was going to do a ladder test or a box test, and really I was crunched for time. The range I go to is like 2 hours from my house, so it takes a while to get to it. And I said, you know what, I'll just go ahead and we'll start making impacts, and if I start noticing problems, we'll go from there. But you know what, it performed really well. Shot 55 grain, 62 grain full metal jackets. We're talking maybe 1.5 inches or a minute and a half on average for a 5-shot group out of this rifle with that ammunition. So no match ammunition, but I was able to make a lot of really good hits with it, except for the very small targets. I wasn't able to get on. I kind of blame the rifle shooter ammunition more than the optic, just because it's just kind of dancing around the target there. Of course, I was shooting at that groundhog. I think that target's about the size of a bowling pin at 400, so that's a pretty tough target to get on, but it can be done. So I don't blame the optic on that, but it did track phenomenally. Basically, I put my firing solution in, and I was making hits right where I expected, no surprises, and of course it returned to 0. Now, as far as the BDC reticle, this is kind of where the review kind of skews downhill a little bit, specific to this scope. So this has their BDC reticle. There's 2 different kinds. This one's the MOA version. They do have a mil version. I recommend you get the mil version, and the reason for that, I feel that the reticle itself is a little busy inside the segmented circle. I'll put a photo of both up there, and you can kind of see the mil versus the MOA version. The mil's got a nice fine little aiming point with that dot, and this one kind of has a cross, and it's just a lot going inside that segmented circle. As I mentioned before, this is a first focal plane scope, and I thought that, hey, this thing's first focal plane, I dial that guy down, and I'm gonna see just a nice little fine circle. I can illuminate it, and it's gonna kind of work like a red dot. No, it's not really even daylight visible. Okay, maybe we can live with that, but the whole BDC reticle itself is illuminated, and what happens is, since this is first focal plane, that reticle stays right on the same focal plane, so when you zoom out, that reticle gets really small, and it gets kind of hard to pick up. There's no real fine aiming point at 2 magnification. It's just kind of a busy mess at 2 power. It's usable on larger targets, but just not a real good aiming point. Now, when I zoom all the way into 12 power, I get the opposite kind of effect. It's a little bit too busy, as I mentioned, and because of the way the BDC is set up, it kind of obscures smaller targets. So if you're trying to get a really fine shot in, you're kind of having to work around that a little bit. That's why I would recommend the mil version. I just think it's a better reticle design. Outside of that, the rest of it's pretty good. I mean, it's got you got nice wind holds, 1 MOA each. That way you don't have to dial your windage knob, which you'd really want to do that anyway, because your wind is always going to be never going to be constant. So you're always guessing your wind anyway. Of course, their BDC reticle. Now for my loads, I run a little slower on my 55 and 62 grain stuff, and the BDC worked to me about 400 yards, where it starts to kind of drop a little bit, and really at that distance I just start dialing. But you can get on there. If your velocities are somewhere around 3,100 feet per second, you're going to be probably pretty good out to 400 or 500 yards. It may be a little tricky to get out at 600, so you might want to think about getting some 77 or some 75 grain OTM match type ammunition, and you'll do a little bit better with those. What I really think is pretty awesome about this scope particularly is you get the combination of having that BDC reticle, you've got the exposed target turrets, you got illumination, you got the side parallax, which is going to help you really dial in that shot and tighten everything up a little bit better, and just a really fantastic design by Athlon. So overall, fantastic scope. You're going to get a lot of features for the money, and honestly, you're going to have a hard time finding very many scopes that's going to give you this much for the money. We've got a lot of the modern designs that we want. For example, the large exposed turrets. We've got locking turrets and precision zero stop. We've got the side parallax. We've got illumination BDC reticle, 2 to 12 power, of course, multi-coated glass. They've got their XPL coatings here, and just a fantastic scope. The only con I had was with the MOA BDC reticle. For whatever reason that you guys are hung up on the BDC reticle, of course you can go to the 4 to 20, a little bit bigger scope, which I have over there on my sapper rifle, and that's a fantastic scope. It's the mil version, and it has I think it's called the AMPR6 or something like that. But I really like the reticle. It's got a nice fine dot in the center of the crosshair, and it gives you such a fantastic precision aiming point. So about the same money, so I definitely take a look at that. Of course, if you're really not interested in maybe spending this much, you can go down to the Argos. If you do that, you are going to give up the locking turrets, but they do got the precision zero stop. Okay, those scopes are a little bit bigger, and they're not going to have the elevation that you have in this one. I think the Argos is either 60 or 80 MOA of vertical travel, so just keep that in mind. Of course, you could step up to say the Midas or the Ares line. But if you go to the Midas, most of those are second focal planes, so just be mindful of that. And of course, you're not going to get the locking turrets on that one. The Midas TAC, I believe, has a capped windage knob, and I think that one is first focal plane as well. And then, of course, the Ares is probably one of my all-time favorite Athlon scopes, the Ares BTR, which I haven't reviewed, ironically. At some point, I think I will. But anyway, so you can check those out. Of course, if you don't want to do Athlon, probably the closest competitor to this would be the Primary Arms GLX, just because I looked at that one. A lot of same features. I've not looked through the glass, so I really can't compare to that, but I've heard good things about it. But you are going to pay a little bit more, probably $100, $150 more to get into that scope. You could go to the SLX and be somewhere in that price point, but I think overall you're going to be happier with this scope. You could go over to Vortex if you go into the PST Gen 2s. You're going to be spending upwards of $200 or $300 more to get into, say, like the 2 to 10. Or something along those lines. They do got the new Venom scope out. That one's first focal plane, but it's not illuminated. There's no BDC reticle, and you don't have locking turrets. So keep that in mind if you're kind of comparing the two. And you're wanting a bigger scope, you might look at the Athlon 6 to 24 because you're going to get all those features with illuminated reticle, and you're going to be over 100 minutes of elevation. And I think the Venom's 80. So that's probably all I got. Really, really like it. Can't wait to go back out to the range with this again and just have some fun with this really cool rifle build that I did. But you guys got any questions, feel free to drop me a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you. Other than that, I appreciate you guys checking out the channel and you have a wonderful day.